Hi, I'm Christine Hammond, the Executive Director of Prosecutors Center for Excellence. Thank you for viewing this video that's brought to you by PCE and Equitas. On October 18th, 2022, PCE had a pop-up dedicated to crime analysts in a prosecutor's office. The following presentation is by Sophia Roach, who was a senior prosecutor at the San Diego District Attorney's Office and is now a senior attorney with PCE. She's going to talk about how a crime analyst can help prosecutors with their cases in terms of investigating and getting ready for trial. You can see more about her biography and also a publication about crime analysts in a prosecutor's office on our website at pceinc.org under events. Thanks.
We really have a broad definition of crime analysts that we're using here, and we're basing this in large part on the accompanying article that's in the booklet. Our crime analysts are 21st century investigators. They're digital designers, they're experts, and they become policy pros through their work on data with our offices. Talking first about this 21st century detective, this is the case-specific crime analyst. And the case-specific crime analyst does a wide variety of tasks. And these are probably many of the analysts that we're very familiar with in our offices. They help us gather evidence. They look at social media. They might help us understand application information that we have subpoenaed from a record. They might be looking through cell phone records to help us find patterns and associations. They look through public records, criminal records. They assist us with mapping. In reviewing those records, they are uniquely able to tell us what's missing. When we get a pile of subpoenaed documents from a phone company, let's say, depending on what that company it is, it may not be very straightforward, and we may not be familiar with everything that's needed to put together an actual map of what those records show later down the road. But our analysts know what to look for, and they know what to tell us to get when we don't have it. Our analysts also help organize discovery, computer and phone downloads, video, surveillance. Now we've also got a host of other digital technology that we're looking at: license plate readers, body-worn cameras, dash cam video, traffic video. It's become so overwhelming in the discovery process to get all of this information that having an analyst can kind of make or break your case in terms of finding that small piece of this giant volume of data that could potentially be relevant. And of course, they're also experts, and they testify regular in that capacity. So just to give you an example of this 21st detective in action, I'm going to talk a little bit about a case study. This involved an analyst from San Diego by the name of Peter Villiver, who absolutely made this case the definition of a crime analyst 21st century detective. We had a murder in a barbershop of a local rapper who also was a business owner, and no suspect information. We had video, we had extensive video from the scene, but nobody seemed to know who this person was. We found out why later. So in came Peter. One of the first things he did was to look through the huge volume of video evidence that was obtained from detectives and law enforcement officers on the scene. This is only a partial view of some of the cameras we had, but you can see just in this one small area, we've got 6 different pieces of video footage that could potentially be relevant. And of course, every single one of those videos had different clocks, different times, and they weren't necessarily set to some type of actual standard time. So one of the first things that Peter did in this case was to do a video review in order to calibrate all the different videos so that he knew what was going on each camera in conjunction with what was going on in other cameras. And this would become very important later down the road when we talked about demonstrative exhibits. Once he was able to do that, he could then pull out video stills and create an exhibit like this, which gave the video footage with the original timestamp, but then showed the actual time and a description of what it appeared the individual was doing for later testimony. And this was used demonstratively while he testified on the stand about the calibration and what his observations were at that time, so that he could make this assessment of what the real time was. Now, he did this for all of the different videos. So every single video could really be looked at in kind of real time together. So what Peter noticed from that video with our suspect who was inside this liquor store is that this appeared to be the same suspect who entered into the barbershop, which was located just next door, and then ran out at the same time that shots rang out in the neighborhood, as evidenced by other video, which you're going to see a little bit later. And so Peter really studied this liquor store video. And what he noticed is that the suspect was on the phone in the video. And now he had a video calibration timestamp. So he knew when the suspect was on the phone and for how long the suspect was on the phone. That allowed us to get a tower dump. Essentially a request for data from all of the different cell towers that service the one area where the victim was murdered. Now, as you might imagine, this is San Diego. We've got a population of multiple millions, and people have one cell phone, two cell phones, who knows? There's millions and millions of cell phones. So even taking this small segment of information, which Peter was able to define as being sometime between 11/23/01 and 11/23/19, he was able to sort through over 17,000 records and come up with three transactions that matched the general time, the location by the cell tower, and the duration of the phone call. Well, interestingly enough, two of those numbers were in communication with each other. And because Peter had calibrated the videos, he was able to show that there was another individual on the street out in front of the barbershop, also on their cell phone at the same time. Now, you might imagine that this was like finding a needle in a haystack, and it was. As it turns out, this was an orchestrated assassination. This was a hitman. This was not somebody from San Diego, not somebody that anybody recognized, not somebody who was living under their real identity. This is somebody who had actually escaped from a prison in Jamaica and had been an Interpol most wanted for decades. But ultimately, that phone didn't get turned off. And we were able to use the phone number that we found in the cell phone records to convict this individual and to provide a measure of justice for Lamar and his family, his young son, his namesake here. When I say that Peter solved this case, he was on the stand for 2 days as an expert in cell site data. As you might imagine, this was extremely critical information. Now, Peter has also testified for me in other cases, in other areas of expertise. One time we had a set of cell phone records, and there were these random hits that didn't make any sense with what we believed had happened. And now we had to keep an open mind. So we went out and we took a look. And what Peter discovered is that the cell site records that had been generated by the cell site provider were incorrect. And he set aside proving it using a very scientific method. He actually went out and he visited every single cell site that was pertinent in our records. It was a total of about 50 cell sites, took pictures of every single one of them. And he noted that there were clear signs, access, equipment, and infrastructure associated with cell sites. Well, when he went to try and locate this random cell site that nobody could figure out why it was popping up in the records, that's because it didn't exist. And he and the investigator documented as such, and Peter was later able to testify to that using these same exhibits that I'm showing you now. He presented this additional information showing the actual location of the cell site, and because of his understanding of the records and the fact that he knew that this was a major hub cell site for one of our major freeways, he was able to show that this appeared to be the actual cell site as opposed to the one that came in with the original Federal Trade Commission records that had been used to identify the original location. So, as I said, absolutely critical witness helping with information. Now, there are other types of crime analysts that we also use, which we like to call technical analysts. These are our digital designers. They also have extensive expertise in downloading phones, converting surveillance videos, sophisticated internet searches. But they also assist with management, storage, transfer of data, especially when you've got discovery where you're talking about multiple terabyte computer downloads. But they also create demonstrative exhibits. And these are, of course, the things that we relish the most when we actually get into the courtroom. Everything else that they do beforehand, of course, we also very much appreciate. But this is kind of these are the things that we like to be able to use with our witnesses in front of the juries as convincing evidence. And they do an enormous variety of those. And we're going to see a couple of examples later. They also testify as experts. Now, the importance of these digital designers was made very clear to me in that same barbershop case. So using Peter's calibration, I was able, and Peter, by the way, is a geo information specialist. Okay, that's what his academic background is in. That's his specialty. And so his mapping skills are extraordinary. When it came to actually doing a digital design of the video, I turned to our trial support services. And I had another absolutely excellent analyst, Dana Jones, who is one of our demonstrative evidence experts and has a background in video production. And he was able to take all of these different cameras and to create a singular exhibit where I was able to show the jury on one screen I apologize. Let me make sure I'm at we're at the beginning. Okay, so we've got a suspect outside while our shooter is now walking out of the liquor store. And you can see while he's walking out that they're kind of mirroring each other. The second man is talking and appears to be looking. He goes to a car, which we were able to see pull in earlier. And there's another vehicle, which I won't spend too much time discussing. This was obviously a complicated circumstantial case in some ways. And now we see our shooter who's walked out of the liquor store, walking into the frame with our person near the silver car who's just opened the trunk. They exchange something. Our shooter is now walking into the barbershop. Our second suspect goes to the trunk, shuts it, and all of a sudden you see the employees start to react on News Channel 2. We know that the shot has rung out. And what we're going to see next is our shooter running out of the frame, around the corner from the barbershop and out of the frame. And then next, what do we see? We see the individual in the silver car now leaving the scene. Now, this was an extensive video. It lasted 14 minutes total. And obviously we can't play the whole thing, but you get the point. Now, each of these videos was presented to jurors individually, so they got to see it more than once. But putting it together after they already had some familiarity and being able to use this in closing argument, you can see here on the camera views, we were able to explain to the jurors with the expert on the stand what angle each camera was. We were able to show them that, you know, the red light up represents this camera here, the blue here, and to put these videos into a format so they could really see it play out almost like a movie. Now, with regard to the last type of analyst that we're talking about, it's the overview analyst. And this is, when we think of the term analyst and specifically data analyst, this is one of the traditional ideas that we have. They look at data and intelligence. Now that can lead them to establishing associations and networks of criminals. It can be something where we're looking at crime trends in a particular type of crime, or maybe a pattern in a specific area. Crime analysts also are able to sort demographic data when we have it in our own case management system. And they generate output that can be very helpful. It can be used to put on public websites so that the district attorney can display what they're doing in terms of management of their cases, felony convictions, misdemeanor convictions, and diversion programs. They can create maps, timelines, and also detailed policy memos. And we're going to be hearing in a little bit about a group that did just that and their extraordinary results. One of the things that I have used these overview analysts for is also reacting to new legislation. So in California in 2020, they passed the Racial Justice Act, which allowed defense under certain circumstances to obtain some very detailed demographic information about certain types of prosecutions. And before we trained the entire state of California on how to think about responding to this and what was available, one of the first things we did was to step in with a data analyst and really look at what they were capable of pulling and doing so that we were giving real information to prosecutors about what was possible, what was not possible, and how they might think about how to sort information that they may have access to in order to appropriately respond to either requests for and or orders for this type of demographic information. I'd just like to wrap up by talking about the unbelievable expertise of these key players in our system. They often have a very complex background. They dabble in forensics, criminology, public policy, statistics and data analytics, computer science, geographic informations. They are artists and designers and digital animators. They are creative and they really believe in our cases and want to work our cases as hard as we do. They spend an extraordinary amount of time making sure that their work is perfect. And I know that just in preparation for this today. And I want to assure you that Galen Bernstein, who's not able to teach this morning, is going to be recorded. She has got a phenomenal presentation, which really showcases a very accessible but very robust method of displaying cell phone data in conjunction with other types of evidence which you may have in your case.